There are archives within the deep storage of the Emergency Services Department that the public is never meant to hear. These are not the tapes of accidents or typical crimes, but recordings that defy logical explanation, anomalies. Among digital folklore, one specific recording from November 1999 stands out, a file often referred to as the Echo. It has been scrubbed from official records, denied by the police, and exists only in the terrified memories of the transcriptionist who first typed out the log. This is the story of that tape.
The incident took place in a secluded residence near the fictional Blackwood Ridge, a location notorious for its isolation and poor signal reception. The homeowner, a man we will call Mark, lived alone, miles away from the nearest neighbor. It was a night besieged by a violent storm, the kind of weather that rattles window panes and drowns out the world. The electricity had been flickering for hours, leaving the house bathed in erratic shadows that seemed to dance with a life of their own.
According to the transcript, Mark had been asleep when a sound woke him. It wasn't the thunder, nor the wind howling through the eaves. It was something more deliberate, a heavy, rhythmic thudding against the siding of his house. He described it later not as a knock, but as if someone were feeling the walls, running their hands along the perimeter, searching for a weakness. He stood by the window, peering into the abyss of the storm, his heart hammering against his ribs.
A flash of lightning illuminated the yard, and for a split second, Mark saw him, a figure standing perfectly still in the torrential rain. The stranger wasn't seeking shelter. He wasn't hunched over against the wind. He was simply standing there, facing the house, staring directly at the window where Mark was hidden. The sheer, unnatural stillness of the intruder sent a primal wave of dread coursing through Mark's veins. This was not a lost hiker.
As the storm raged, the porch light flickered on, casting a sickly yellow glow onto the intruder. Mark's breath caught in his throat. The man outside was wearing a faded flannel shirt and worn jeans, the exact same clothes Mark was wearing at that very moment. But the horror didn't stop at the attire. As the figure tilted its head, Mark realized he wasn't looking at a stranger. He was looking at his own face. It was an identical copy of himself, standing in the rain with a blank, hollow expression.
Panic, cold and absolute, took hold. Mark scrambled away from the window, crawling on his hands and knees to the hallway where the landline sat. He dialed 911 with trembling fingers, praying the storm hadn't severed the line. Every second of silence felt like an eternity until the connection clicked. He didn't scream. He whispered, terrified that the thing outside might hear him through the walls. He told the operator there was a man outside. He didn't dare say the man looked exactly like him.
The recording from this point becomes degraded, filled with static and bursts of white noise. The operator, a woman named Sarah according to the logs, struggled to understand him. She asked for his address, but Mark was rambling, his voice pitching higher with hysteria. He kept repeating that the intruder wasn't moving, that he was just watching. But then the dynamic changed. Mark went silent. Through the receiver, the sound of breaking glass shattered the quiet.
He was inside. Mark dropped the receiver, leaving it dangling by its cord, swaying back and forth like a pendulum. The recording captured the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, and wet. The squelch of soaked boots on hardwood floors. Mark retrieved the phone and retreated,
fleeing up the stairs to the only room with a lock, the master bedroom. He narrated his movements to the operator in breathless sobs, describing how the footsteps downstairs sounded exactly like his own gait.
He barricaded himself in the closet, burying himself beneath old coats and boxes. The darkness was absolute, smelling of mothballs and fear. The operator, trying to keep him calm, instructed him to stay on the line and remain silent. Police were dispatched, but the storm meant they were at least 20 minutes out. 20 minutes is a lifetime when you are being hunted by your own reflection. Mark whispered that he could hear the intruder on the stairs.
The bedroom door creaked open. It wasn't kicked in, it was opened gently, with a terrifying familiarity. The footsteps entered the room. They didn't search wildly, they moved with purpose, straight toward the closet. It was as if the intruder shared Mark's memories, knew exactly where he would hide. Mark stopped breathing, his hand clamped over the mouthpiece of the phone. The operator could hear the proximity, the faint, wet breathing of the thing standing just inches from the closet door. Then the closet door was pulled open. Mark didn't scream. His voice had failed him. He stared up at the figure looming over him. It was him. Every scar, every mole, the receding hairline, it was a perfect biological mirror. But it was wrong. The eyes were too wide, unblinking, devoid of any soul or consciousness. It was a biological puppet wearing his skin, staring down at him with a curiosity that felt distinctly predatory.
This is where the concept of the uncanny valley transforms into pure nightmare fuel. The entity looked like Mark, but it didn't move like a human. Its movements were jerky, lagging slightly behind reality. It crouched down, bringing its face inches from Mark's. The recording picked up a sound from the entity, a low, guttural vibration, like a mimic trying to warm up its vocal cords. The operator, hearing the distress, shouted into the line, "Sir, do not speak. Keep the line open."
The operator repeated her command, desperate to maintain a link to the victim. "Sir, I need you to stay quiet. Help is almost there. Just stay quiet." The tension on the tape is palpable, a thick silence that hangs heavy in the air. Mark was paralyzed, staring into his own dead eyes. The entity opened its mouth, mimicking the exact shape of Mark's own terrified gasp.
And then, the moment that caused this tape to be buried, the operator asked one final time, "Sir, are you there?" On the recording, two voices answered, not one after the other, but in perfect, impossible unison. Two distinct vocal cords, pitched exactly the same, speaking the same words at the exact same millisecond. They both said, in a monotone, flat delivery, "We are here." The synchronization was mathematical, inhuman. It wasn't an echo, it was a duet.
The line went dead immediately after those words. When the police arrived 19 minutes later, the front door was locked. The back window was broken, just as described, but the house was empty. There was no sign of Mark and no sign of an intruder. No footprints in the mud outside, no DNA evidence, just a phone dangling off the hook in the master bedroom closet. The tape was filed away, labeled as a prank or a glitch, but those who heard the dual voices know better. They know that somewhere Mark is still out there, or perhaps he was replaced.